which was launched, goodness, last week on Friday. So yes, hopefully we'll be able to answer questions that you have today, and I can talk a little bit as well about the fund and what it's about. I'm Melanie Collins, or Mel Collins. I'm job share with Steve. We are head of the fund here in DFE. So Emma is driving the slides at the moment. So Emma, would you mind clicking to the next one, please? Thank you. So yes, welcome everyone. I will start by giving a disclaimer that this session is being recorded, and the recording of the session is going to be uploaded to our Jagger portal. So hopefully everyone's comfortable with that, and it also means that we'll be able to capture all of the questions that are answered today and upload them to the portal. So anybody who's not able to make today's session, I'm very conscious of the short time frame that people had to respond. They'll be able to access all of the information that we share in today's session. So in terms of how we're going to run today, I'll give an overview of what this funding stream is about. I'll talk through the timeline and next sessions, and then the bulk of the session will be over to questions and answers. And we've got an hour today, so hopefully that will be enough to cover everything we need to. So Emma, could I have the next slide up, please? Thank you. So yeah, this is a very, very short overview of the fund. So it's £92 million, which is made up of £42 million programme and £50 million capital. It's designed, so the whole scheme is there to support transformational activity across an area. So it's got a real place-based approach. And that funding can be used to upgrade facilities or equipment and curriculum. And everything has to be about better meeting economic and employer need. It can be used to support efficiencies in FE infrastructure for an area, and that can be in the form of greater specialisation, phasing out low value or duplicate provision, or investing in shared services. Your proposals can be up to £1.5 million of capital and up to 1.25 million of programme. I hope that it's clear in the prospectus and the way that we've set this out. That kind of top level amount, we're really hoping that bids will come through reflecting the amount that's needed for the activity that you're proposing. So that's fine to send the winking emoji to the whole group. So yeah, we very much hope that any bids that we see will reflect what's kind of needed value-wise. Emma, could we go back to the slide with lots of writing on, please? Thank you. So activity needs to complete by the end of next financial year, so March 31st next year, and the funding won't be permitted to slip into the 23-24 financial year. We are very conscious that again, as with last year's activity, is a relatively tight time frame, and one of the things that we will be assessing against is deliverability. So yeah, ideally we'd have longer, we don't, and we will be checking that things aren't coming through that are requesting funding into 23-24. So geography, applications should reflect the geographies of existing combined authorities and local enterprise partnerships, except for those 4 areas listed below. Funding is available for every single area in England, and we are expecting that every area that submits a credible bid that directly meets the skills needs of employers will be funded. We will only accept 1 application from each area, and that application has to be endorsed by all other FE colleges in the area. You'll see that we've asked you in the application form to show if you can't have the support of other providers, then to explain why that was. And we are expecting the support of an employer representative body. One of the things that I really want to get across is that we obviously have run a pilot year, so last financial year, where we funded similar activities, and we've tried really hard to learn from the process of running those activities. So we've streamlined our application process, recognising that last year we experienced some delays to releasing your grant offer letters. We've simplified some of the outputs and increased the coverage. We now have some new reporting requirements, and we've been clear about what we're expecting at the very outset. We are hoping, we do expect, that you will continue to report to us for 2 years after the funding has ended, so 3 years in total. But I really want to emphasise that the reason that we're asking for that is not for any kind of accountability or ambition to claw back funding if impacts haven't been realised. It's for us to learn whether this relatively new way of funding activity has worked and what level of returns we've received for our investment. And then finally, as above, the funding is going to be based on the delivery of an agreed activity rather than the achievement of outputs, recognising that some of this activity will be new for many of you and may be riskier. So, Emma, if you could go on to the next slide, please. So, next steps. You have until midday on Friday, the 13th of May to submit your applications. The first thing that we ask people to do, though, is to register an account and ask any questions through our Jagger platform. Questions that we receive today, we will transcribe and put onto the platform as well, so other people have access to them. The deadline for asking those questions is the 6th of May, and I will emphasise very, very strongly that any questions received via email or any other means cannot be answered. We will obviously politely go back to you and say, please, can you submit this through the portal? The reason it's really, really important that you acknowledge this is that obviously sending us a question and then getting a reply back to us saying, can you put it through the portal, will lose you some time. And the reason that we need to make sure that everything is done through the portal is for accountability and transparency purposes. So please, please, please put your questions on the portal and you'll get an answer. It will come from our team. We're the ones that answer the questions, so you'll get the same level of response that you'd get. We do also have the ability, if we have very, very niche questions, to just respond to that individually rather than kind of a blanket response. So any question is welcome and we'll go onto the portal. And then finally, submission should go to the email address that's on the slide here, and the deadline is, again, midday on the 13th of May. So I think that then takes us on to the question and answer session. I will just, before handing over for questions, I've seen a couple that have popped up in the chat as well. My team are keeping a log of all of the questions and answers that we provide today. We will do our best to answer them, but if there's any that are really, really specific and do require us to go away and do a bit of checking, then we'll ask you to submit those through Jagger. I'm hoping that there won't be too many that are like that, but that's the way that we'll run today. I've seen a hand pop up, so as long as everyone in the room with me is happy, then I will hand over to questions. Oh my goodness, there's multiple hands.
You can answer this one first if you want, the one that's in the chat.
Yeah.
So I'm just picking up the chat here. So is this just for FE colleges or ITPs as well? Jamie, you responded, which you're absolutely right. The lead applicant needs to be the FEC, but ITPs can be part of the application and receive the funding. There's some slight nuances, which is in the prospectus around capital and ITPs, but that's all set out in the prospectus.
Right, good. So I can see the order in which hands went up. So the top hand up for me at the moment is Hamid.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks for that. I'm Hamid Khan from Muat Trust in Birmingham. Just a quick one. We actually have learners scattered throughout the West Midlands, Buckinghamshire, and London. So does that mean that we'd be able to make applications in those multiple areas, or would it just be one organisation per region or city?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's absolutely fine to be part of the bids for those areas. If you're delivering for either employers or learners in that area, then being part of that collaboration is absolutely fine.
So does that mean that we'd have to be part of a consortium in those areas, or can we do it unilaterally?
So we only expect one application from an area.
Okay.
So I think that probably answers the question. If we receive more than one application from an area, we are likely to come back to all those different people in that area that have submitted different proposals and say, can you work together and come forward with one? So that's only going to really put some delay into the approvals process. So that is partly why we're saying all those FE colleges that can lead an application should be endorsing the one that comes forward. That kind of minimises the risk of two different applications being prepared and sent forward from one area. Is that
okay?
Yeah.
Answers my question. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem. So the next hand that's up on my list is Andy.
Hello, team. Within boundaries, our LEP boundaries are not coterminous with ERBs. So if we are Greater Lincolnshire, for example, and you've got a Lincolnshire chamber, but that doesn't cover the South Humber, which is Hull and Humber, do we have to get two ERBs to support, or do we just go with the one that's actually got the most geographic coverage?
I would say get the one that's got the most geographic coverage. If you want to get both, don't feel limited to one. If you want to get both, that's fine. But I would say when you look at, given that it's not a huge amount of money per area, it may be that the thing you come forward from might have more relevance to one part of the LEP area than another. So picking the most relevant ERB to the bid, I think, would be the trick. But we're not expecting you to get every ERB that could possibly have an interest in your LEP area to be endorsing it.
Right. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Right, Dan's hand is up next.
Hi, thanks. I'm from East Kent College Group, EKC Group. So we were part of the pilot phase. I'm just double checking that won't impact upon our ability as a collective group of colleges to apply again. And secondly, about the capital particularly, and the hardwired 31st of March 2023, as Jay will know as one of our leads in the DFE. The supply chains and delivery issues that we faced in phase one led to some of the equipment, particularly that coming from the EU in particular, being delayed beyond the 31st of March. So is it that it is goods received or invoices paid? Because there is a very, very different, or invoices received, because there's a very different issue, and the concern is that if we do some proper investigation with employers over the May through to September, October period, and they want us to buy a particular bit of kit, that it will take 16 to 23 weeks to be received.
Good. Okay, so I can answer both of those questions, or try to. Absolutely, we are very conscious that our broader rollout will mean that some of the areas were involved in pilots last year. We absolutely don't expect, having been involved in an SDF pilot, to disadvantage you from applying this time round. The only thing that we do say is that it shouldn't be for activity that was already funded last year. It should be for new activity. So yeah, absolutely, please do apply. And then secondly, on the capital question, we are conscious that part of the reason that we experienced delays last year was due to supply chain issues and COVID, and we do recognise that there is a risk that those things will continue to disrupt and cause a risk of slippage into next financial year. It's my understanding, although please somebody shout if I'm wrong, that we can account on an accruals basis, so it would be the invoice rather than the delivery of goods. But I'm new to DFE. I came from a different funding organisation.
Yeah, and it's not my strength. I have to admit, accounting and stuff. So I think we'll confirm that through Jagger for you.
Great. I think that would be really important, given if you can see the Port of Dover, as I can, the amount of delays that are happening today because of staff shortages and everything else. COVID hasn't gone away, and sadly neither has Brexit. So I would imagine and envisage, if you're buying specialist equipment, and just to be clear, ours was we bought it in Germany because it was the only place that we could buy it. And it led to significant supply chain delays. So I'll just keep flagging that, because it is important to people who have not participated in this programme before.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve. I was just going to add something, if that's okay. So my name's Emma Bagley. I work in the commercial team, and I am supporting Steve and Mel and their colleagues in the delivery of the Strategic Development Fund. What I wanted to say is, for throughout the life of the grant. So once kind of the fund's been agreed, money is being given, any supply chain issues that are identified, we just ask that you notify us as soon as possible, and we would try and work with you as much as we can. Working in commercial, I can fully appreciate the difficulties that you may come across when it comes to supply chains, and we do want to work with you in that. All we ask is that you flag it to us as early as possible so that we can work with you to help where we can. Thank you.
And can I just come back to Andy, because I think I may have slightly misled you in my answer about the ERBs. So it's been pointed out to me that we said in the prospectus that the geographic coverage of the ERB should, as a minimum, include the geographic area covered by the collaboration, which may mean endorsement of more than one ERB is required. But we have also said in that we expect the endorsement of the ERBs, and if you're unable to get that endorsement, explaining that you've tried and why is okay. So what we're not saying is if you can't get the endorsement of an ERB, your bid is void, but we kind of want to know that you've tried and why it wasn't possible. So sorry, I think I may have misled you slightly there, Andy.
Right, thank you. The other bit to recognise is that I think there's going to be a parallel call for LSIPs, which I'm led to believe comes out in May, and that's why it's important, because in terms of the development of and the selection of who the ERB is per area.
Yeah.
Dan, your Teams hand is still up. Was your question answered enough, or was there anything else that you needed to ask?
Yeah, sorry, it was answered enough. I'll put it down.
Good. Thank you.
I can't put it down. Someone else can, though, I'm sure.
Okay. Good. Okay, so I think Rosie is next on my list.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question about timings in terms of start date. So I understand we'll know the outcome in June, get an offer letter early July, but in terms of the funding profile in the application form, we're asked to profile spend from August. So does that mean we won't be able to incur spend until the 1st of August, or will it be the case that we can start to incur costs as soon as we know the project's been approved?
Steve and I were talking about this earlier. So I guess this probably the most important thing to link it to is the fact that we will assess for deliverability. We are expecting most bids to run from September through to March. So i.e. noting that it's a 7 month programme rather than a full year. I don't think that there's anything, though, that would stop us from releasing funding in August. And certainly not from, Steve and I were saying that we do recognise that you have the summer break from late July through to September. So we're thinking in most cases your money spending would start in September, but there may be some activity that would start in July. And I
think we'll clarify that point on Jagger, that if you incur costs before your grant offer letter, so there's the confirmation of your success, and then obviously later, as it goes through the various processes, you've got your grant offer letter comes out. We'll clarify and confirm in Jagger about incurred costs in between those two things, because obviously we want you to get up and going as quickly as possible, but you don't want to be running things at risk of not being able to then claim that money. So it's an important point, so I kind of don't want to get it wrong. So we'll clarify that. Is that okay?
Lovely, thank you.
And I spotted in the chat that Dan and others have said you don't close down. I absolutely didn't want to imply that no work happens in August, but also didn't want to imply that we expected you to work during time when you may be on summer break. But yeah, I mean, it was the same in the universities sector, and yeah, same thing there, where people would carry on with their networking activities. Good. Okay, let me go back to the order of hands up. So Tim, I think your hand is next on the list. Oh, Tim, I don't think you've come off mute.
Oh, sorry, is that better?
Yes.
Muting is always a good idea, isn't it? We were one of the pilot rounds, and we had a multiple streamed submission, is it permissible to do that again?
So how did you, sorry, I'm being relatively new. I'm not 100% sure what multiple streamed.
Okay, well, we had a central theme of greener Sussex. Within that theme, there were various activities going on.
So yeah, this is the, I don't see any reason that that approach would be not permitted this time round. I guess the only restriction that we have is the need for one bid per area, but absolutely it can consist of multiple different activities to meet the priorities.
Okay, thanks for that. Then in that case, that leads me to a question about section 2.3 on the application form, which says, please describe how collaborative activity will develop, blah, 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 blah. 250 words. Would that be 250 words in total, or could that be 250 words per one of these per stream?
I think it's 250 words in total.
Okay, so that's the opposite of last time on the application form when it was 250. Well, I think it was 500 actually per work stream.
Well, we will double check that. Edwina is on the call. Maybe Edwina, can you clarify that?
Yeah, shall I just come in there? So
yeah.
In section, sorry, did you say it was section 2.1?
2.3.
2.3. So with 2.3, you're talking about the different projects, if you have more than one project. So that's in its entirety. So that is just limited to 250 words in total. But what you'll see in section 3 is if you have more than one project, you'll complete section 3, the template for each project. So you'll have more words in there where you can describe the project in more detail.
Right, thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you.
Good, okay. I think Jamie's hand is next on my list.
Yeah, hi. I have to declare that I am actually a local enterprise partnership rather than a provider. A little bit cheeky, I managed to get in on here. But just following again on from Andy's question, can you just confirm where we have more than one ERB endorsing the application, will they be expected to put in a joint LSIP expression of interest as well?
So I don't think we're able to answer questions on the LSIP expression of interest process at the moment.
Okay, and the other question was actually whether a LEP would be counted as an ERB in this instance. I know that wasn't the case last time, but just wanted to check.
So I believe it's still the definition that's going through the skills bill at the moment, which I believe is not LEPs. But Jamie, if I'm wrong there, I know you're on the call, maybe you could either correct or confirm.
That's correct. So the definition being used in the skills and education bill excludes LEPs, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Good. Let me go back to my list of hands up. I think we only have one hand up left, which is Tony.
Hi. This is going to be entirely hypothetical because I'm sure it won't apply to any of the applications that come from this group. Let's assume that you get one application from an area and presumably by the criteria that you've published, you decide that it's not credible. What happens next?
So I think that what happens next, so obviously the first thing that happens is they're informed that that's not a credible bid. I think we would then need to look at what we had got in across the piece and decide whether we were going to come back out and ask for a resubmission. The key thing here, and again, we can clarify all this in Jagger because obviously you want to know exactly what would happen, and that's a process for us to put there. I think the key thing here to everybody to remember is this is not competitive across areas, are not competing with each other. You're kind of not competing. You're wanting to be eligible. So that would be, that would put us into a position with that particular area to work out what would happen. It wouldn't have any effect on anybody else.
Okay, so Depending on the level of non-credibility, would you negotiate with that applicant and associated colleges?
So I think we'll respond to that in Jagger properly, because I don't want to say the wrong thing here, and I think there's some nuances to the answer.
Absolutely. Okay, good. Thank you. I can't put my hand down, by the way.
I have no idea how to force hands down, but I will note. Oh, I think Dan's hand has gone back up rather than being a remnant hand from last time.
It has. I'm just double checking really, because it asks for a lot of kind of caveats around how your bid is not going to cross over a hell of a lot of other things that are going on in the education world: T-levels, HTQs, IoTs. Choose 3 acronyms and just chuck them at us, and we'll have those. But how can we make sure that things are not going to cut across when we don't know the outcomes of some of those things by the time that the bid comes forward? For example, T-level capital won't be notified until July. So do we just say that we're not linking this to any T-level capitals in our area, for example? The other second one is, can I please urge you to get the group of successful organisations together as quickly as possible so that they can share what their projects are? Because I think in SDF1 that certainly really helped us to develop products and projects faster, because there were a lot of, in our case, there was decarbonisation across a number of different areas, and we were able to share information and projects that actually probably benefited the whole sector as well as just the area.
So on the second question, yeah, we'd be very happy to, as soon as we have the list of successful activities, to publicise that and to put people in touch with each other. And yeah, I think that will lead to good things. The first question, so where you were saying, sorry, I'm not sure if I've got slightly lost. Where you're saying about the kind of linkages to other activities, are you talking about in your proposal the way that you'll describe how you'll complement other activities, or are you talking about how you'll say that you'll avoid being double funded?
Both.
Okay.
There's a particular question in both that says, how do you augment or be distinct from all of the other things that are going on in DFE in terms of project funding? So IoTs being established in an area, capital for T-levels, capital for transformation, HTQ development, funding, bids, etc., etc. There's a whole range of them that do have links to elements, but it's difficult to kind of articulate in 250 words how they're not going to definitely duplicate without just saying they won't duplicate any of these.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what? Do you see what I mean? I love the fact that we've only got 250 words for that particular question, but that doesn't give you a lot of time or space to articulate how you're not going to duplicate or how it links particularly to a sector or a particular element within the in the landscape.
So I'll start to answer your question, but it might be that something that's specific enough that I need other people in my team to add to. I'm never a fan of asking questions where the answer is, well, we just will. So I think if you have existing other activities where you're not 100% sure yet what will be the outcome of it, then I think just describe what the intention is and perhaps where it might complement or duplicate. But I guess tell us what you know within the 250 words. I think for this question, we do recognise that you could write pages and pages, but we don't need that. It's for us to provide receive assurance that we're not double funding something. And also as Steve said, it's not a competitive process. It's not like we're going to look at a selection of bids and say, well, this one's really good because it really complements these other activities, so we'll fund this over this other one. It really is just checking, is this adequate and in line with our strategic aims? So you don't need to write reams on how much this will add to other work that you're doing. So that's why we've put the word limit in place. But I don't know whether that's something that
I think the other thing I'd add, which I think came through from looking at some of the pilot applications, if the way you describe your project appears to be very, very similar to a different funding stream, then clarifying in that part that although it looks very similar, it's different in these ways is what we're after. Because, you know, not only are you haven't got many words to describe it, we haven't got many words to read it and understand. So it's really just helping us understand that this isn't a duplication. I don't know if that helps, but if you can imagine being the recipient of something that looks like, but isn't that what the T-level capital funding's doing, or isn't that what X is doing, and therefore that funding is available somewhere else to do this? We just need to understand why this is distinct.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to think about how 3 large college groups articulate that in 250 words across all the things that they're trying to do, but that's our problem.
Yeah.
And you'll receive something that's beautifully crafted and explains exactly what you just described.
Yeah. And it's only to do with the particular project or projects that you're putting forward for this. So if you start from the point of this and how does it not, rather than there's all this stuff we're doing and this doesn't. Do you see what I mean? There's a kind of a focus I think you can probably do that doesn't mean having to describe 3 college groups and all their activity. That's probably nicely naive of me because I'm not having to put it into 250 words, but.
Yes, and the fact that we've all got loads and loads of new projects and products that are funded through DFE coming forward as well. But yeah, that side, we'll sort it out. Thank you.
Good. Okay, Rosie, I think your hand was next up.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if it's a bit of a request rather than a question. So we're restricted, aren't we, to 1.5 million capital and 1.25 million revenue. So let's say for the sake of argument that in our area we didn't require any capital funding but wanted 2.75 million of revenue. And in another area they wanted the opposite, they wanted capital and no revenue. That would be cost neutral to DFE is my point. So is there a place somewhere, a bit of a dating site where we could maybe have those sort of conversations?
I think we'll have to take that one away, Rosie. I mean, so the reason that we've put a cap in, which we didn't with the pilots, but the reason we've put that in is partly to give you a much better idea of what's available, but also kind of the point you're making, which is as long as it all adds up, it's fine. What we didn't want to do was to put any delays into being able to approve things by having the negotiation phase, which you had in the pilot stage, which does add time. So there's a kind of that's the reasoning behind it. I think we will take away the question of could 2 areas. I think what you're saying is could 2 areas reference each other and say between us we are 2.5 million revenue and 3 million capital, or less than that anyhow, and therefore both together. I don't know, and we would need to go to our legal and commercial people around preferential treatment. It feels like a very good question, a very sensible thing to do that probably has 1,000 layers of legalities underneath it that I kind of wish you hadn't have opened the box, but you have, and therefore we'll find out.
Good. Andy. Someone might. Sorry, hopefully you can hear. There's this gets muted now. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, back in the room. It's just managing expectation. Within some LEP areas, we've got 12 providers. In others, we've got 6, and the size is the same. So we are going to have an interesting kind of commercial exercise in terms of how you're planning 1.5 million capital between quite a large number of providers under narrow through 2 or 3 project themes per programme. So I'm just flagging up that the excitement begins now. I welcome the fact that they're looking for a programme per LEP area. I think that the intent to have a universal programme is fantastic. But I just wanted to kind of just flag up that the LEP areas vary considerably in terms of the number of qualifying partners that may be involved, and in which case it's just managing expectation for all parties that really this is really looking at equipment, not doing major refurbishment, and that partners will need to work quickly to build some price certainty within their cost plan and submission, and that requires immediate action in terms of how you construct a bid. So not really a question, just an observation, but I'm just sharing the fact that this is going to be spread pretty thinly amongst consortiums.
So I think, can I come back?
Yeah.
On? So just picking up on that, so just to give a bit of sort of context, we looked at the amount of money, we concluded that, learning from the pilot, that the kind of caps that we've put there, obviously you wouldn't necessarily hit the cap, but that kind of quantum is what is needed to have a strategic impact. So we resisted the temptation to get into any formulas about different amounts for different areas, depending on either the number of industries or the population or the number of colleges. What I would say as well on that, though, is that we're looking for the area to identify the strategic need, and then the providers that can deliver against that strategic need being the recipients, which doesn't necessarily mean, and probably doesn't mean, an equal spread across all providers in that area this time round. You know, we've got LSIPs coming in, there'll be some funding to support the LSIP. So but I completely and utterly take the point that this is not easy, and relationships that are built up over time in an area have to be pretty mature to have that conversation around, so what is our priority amongst us, and therefore how does that money flow? And I'd encourage those collaborations also to think about what is it that we can share as an output across everybody, even if the actual money isn't equally shared, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not trying, I understand what you're saying.
Thank you. Steve, while you've answered Andy's question, can I just come in on an answer to his previous question?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. Andy, I think one of your previous questions was about employee representative bodies and which ones you get them that signed off. Just for absolute clarity, obviously we'll set out eligibility criteria for ERBs in the LSIP application process, which, as you said, will be launched in May. But just it's probably worthwhile making clear now that one of those eligibility criteria will not be, we won't restrict it only to the ERBs that give support to the SDF this time around. I mean, obviously there might be a high likelihood that would happen, but that won't be like an automatic restriction. So.
Okay, I think Tim's hand is next in my list.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question. Where the employer consultation, etc., has been specified, if you've been part of the pilot round, as we have, then extensive, massive employer liaison has already taken place and is within the LSIP report. I'm assuming we can draw upon that as evidence within the application process. So there's no need to list copious numbers of employers. We'll reference it back to the LSIP report. And hopefully that is, if you confirm that the case, then I have one other question.
I think so.
So it sounds very sensible, but we will confirm via Jagger, but that sounds like a very sensible.
Okay, that's great. The second question is an interesting one because it comes as a result of some of the LSIP findings. And that is the application process specifies level 4 and level 5, but we're picking up a large demand for employers for level sort of 2.5, 3 in some areas. is that level 4-5 criteria absolute, or if we can justify the lower level through employer research, would that then be favourably considered?
So I think I'm probably in danger of giving you a bit of a fudge answer here. So I'd rather, again, clarify that in Jagger. There's definitely one of the sort of intentions is to improve, increase productivity, to sort of, for want of a better word, modernise, etc., which you could read as a 4-5. In fact, actually, I'm doing what I said I wouldn't do, so I'll stop, because I'm going to give you an incomplete answer. So we'll be very clear about that in Jagger, Tim.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Hitim, I think your hand is next.
Hi there, thank you. I just want to check, I know in the prospectus and the application form, in terms of the other colleges that need to be engaged or consulted in the first instance in your area, do lead bidders also need to consult sixth form colleges within the SDF area? Is that optional, or is that?
I believe so. Edwin, can you confirm? I think it's isn't it all the statutory FE providers, of which sixth form colleges are?
Yeah, so we've said that in the prospectus, where they provide a substantial amount of vocational provision. So if a sixth form college was pretty much exclusively A levels, we would expect you to consult with them, but we wouldn't necessarily expect them to sort of be part of the bid. But where sixth form colleges offer a substantial amount of vocational provision, we would expect you to consult with them.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Good. I think Joe's hand is next.
Hello. I wanted to ask something from the perspective of the West of England Institute of Technology, where we have had a sort of West of England IoT-led project, plus other colleges who are not in the IoT in SDF1, which has mirrored the LSIP geography of our area, the wider West of England. That LSIP geography covers 3 LEP areas: Gloucestershire, West of England and Somerset, as does the IoT. All of the partners are keen, as is the LSIP ERB body, to sort of continue that collaborative work that we've begun through the phase 1 into the phase 2, delivering on the findings of LSIP phase 1. And I'm slightly, I'm assuming there's a way for us to continue that work, or is the rule around the LEP geographical area, which doesn't match where the previous investments have been made? I mean, I'm not sure what trumps what, I guess is what I'm saying, in terms of geographies.
Okay, so I might bring Jamie into this, but I think the answer, and Jamie might be able to add a bit to it, is that if you've got, so if I think what you're saying is that your coverage is three LEPs.
Yes.
So I would say 1 bid per area. You're looking at 3 interconnected bids there. However, you need to recognise that would mean from the other areas from those 3 LEPs, there would not be another bid, yeah, if that makes sense. So, Jamie, do you want to add any, or maybe Jay, actually, because you were thinking about this earlier, weren't you? And I know, Jay, you want to come back in on the level 4-5 point.
Yeah. Hi, Joe. So, yeah, absolutely understand that you've got certain industries that have a kind of geographic footprint that's well beyond just one area, like aerospace. And from that perspective, we would understand if you were working closely with your neighbouring areas to align your proposal and ensure a degree of coordination and support for that industry. Does that help?
Yes, I think so. I think I suppose my only follow-up would be around, in terms of your, where there has been an LSIP trailblazer, to what extent do you expect the SDF projects to really focus on delivering the recommendations of those LSIPs? Because to me, I see that as being fundamentally what we should be focusing on as a collaboration. But I don't know if that's just my interpretation, or is that the kind of, is that the correct interpretation, I guess?
So I think that's what we've said in the prospectus, isn't it? That where there's a trailblazer LSIP, that's the kind of dominant plan that you should refer to as to why something's a priority.
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. I think I can clarify that would be the case, and I guess in your area, because a slightly different geography was chosen to trailblaze the, I would say different, sorry, it matched the IoT but was different to the established LEP and mayoral combined authority geography in the area, then the LSIP would be relevant to more than one SDF application.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Can I just pick up on Tim's point on skills levels? And I can see there's been some chat on it, but just to confirm that if you look at page 21 on the prospectus, it says that for the purposes of SDF, skills provision is defined as technical education at levels 2 to 5. Any provision which you are looking to fund below this level must be of high economic value, and that would normally mean it has a coherent pathway up to levels 3 to 5. So you have got flexibility there to put proposals forward at levels 2 to 5.
Thanks, Jay. That's a better answer than mine.
I don't think we have any more hands up, but we've still got 11 minutes. Oh, Hiten, your hand has popped back up.
Yeah, it's just on in terms of focusing on the trailblazer pilot project areas. So is that written in stone? Because if there's an area that wasn't kind of considered in the LSIP, which is a priority sector now, can that be a project, or are you solely tied to the areas that were kind of part of the pilot study? Sorry, I've probably not explained that properly. Let me rephrase that. So does a project in this round have to is it only confined to the pilot sectors?
So I think, are you saying that perhaps where, I guess a year ago, where you were originally doing the work for the LSIP Trailblazer, the priorities have moved on, and so
yeah, or there's other priorities, because in our area there's 3, but that's out of 9 of the LEP's kind of priority sector areas, and it just seems a bit unfair that we're only focusing on those 3 out of the 9 potentially.
I mean, I think the genuine answer to that, again clarified through Jagger, is that the LSIP, and Jamie did come in on this one as well, the LSIP itself. So we're moving to a future where designated employer representative bodies will create a plan in consultation with others around the priorities for that area, and that is what has happened in the Trailblazer year for those LSIP areas, and they've only just been producing their plans. So I think we are looking for the priorities to be around that plan, and that is what the future will look like as well. Is that, Jamie? I don't know if you want to add anything, or indeed correct me if I'm wrong.
I will add that yes, we want the priorities to be around that plan. We recognise that these were Trailblazer LSIPs and that there was slightly different approaches taken in different areas, so they are not a fully comprehensive skills plan in all, as they might be when LSIPs are fully rolled out in the future. So yes, but within that kind of caveat.
And can I just suggest that if you feel there's an area that's been missed, or there's something that's turned up subsequent to the LSIP plan, it's probably a good idea to check with with the relevant stakeholders what they think. You go back to the people who prepared the LSIP plan and say, what do you feel of this? Because that would help in terms of explaining its inclusion in an application.
I think that's a very good idea, Jay. And in the application form where there's a piece about where the ERB has to write its endorsement, then that can be picked up in there. So it's not that you're ignoring that the ERB that has produced the Trailblazer LSIP, because if they're endorsing, well, actually things have changed, or we would endorse this, then I think you're right, Jay, that's the way to pick that up.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the next hand up is Janice's hand.
Hi there. We wouldn't be. I work for a national maths education charity. We're really interested in supporting math skills in vocational contexts, but obviously we're not eligible to bid ourselves, and we'd only be able to support a bid in a small way. I just wondered if there's any way that we can make contact with potential bidders. I think somebody had mentioned earlier possibility of a sort of some sort of facility for making connections, dating, that kind of thing. Is there any way that the DFE can facilitate that?
I don't think there is. I think the best thing to do is to. So are you a national charity, or are you particularly area based?
We're national, but we have local presence. We do a lot of work in different regions.
I think my suggestion, others may have better suggestions, is if there are particular college, it will be colleges that are lead applicants. So we know that colleges will be pulling these bids, they'll be in the lead of pulling these things together. It might be worth approaching somebody like AOC or a represented body and saying, could they put your offer out to their members? And that, I think that's probably the most easiest, efficient way of getting your offer out, because believe me, if we try to do things through DFE, there will be so many hoops that by the time we've got a method of doing it, there's a good chance that that it'll be too late. Of course, we can answer your question in Jagger. We can put your question in Jagger and we can answer it in Jagger, and then anybody who's reading Jagger knows that offer is there. But I would say if you want a sort of more universal way of doing that, then I'd have a chat with the AOC. I don't know if others have got a better idea than that.
Steve, I was going to say, I think that's definitely the right approach. And also, Janice, AOC have got a lot of different special interest groups for different subjects and sectors and technologies. So that's probably the quickest way to find interested colleges.
Okay, that's great. Obviously, we've already got a lot of connections, which we'll be following up as well. So thanks for that. Yeah, cheers.
Good. We've got 5 minutes left and 2 hands up, so hopefully we'll be able to answer the final 2 questions. Neil, yours was first.
Yeah, good afternoon. So I was just referring to a question I put in the chat, and that was about understanding how the funding flows. We weren't successful in the pilots, but we have run a skills accelerator, which is obviously a much lower level of funding, which we're effectively cash flow and then submit at the end. So I just would like to know how this would work.
Ooh.
So Edwina, we're partly challenged here that somebody is on leave who knows this inside out, and I don't want to mislead you. So Edwina, if you know the answer to that, do feel free to come in. If not, we'll clarify that in Jagger.
So can I just check my understanding of the question first of all? So are you saying how will the funding flow to providers?
Yes. So if we get a grant letter in July and process starts in August, and people then start to commit purchases of equipment, and then we start to develop provision and start to deliver that. So that's clocking up costs on an ongoing basis. Is it the fact that at the end of March, so into 23, got the right date, we then submit our total bill effectively and you pay us, or do you pay us on an ongoing basis? So if somebody wants to invest £100,000 in a piece of kit, do we get paid once we've paid for it?
Yeah.
Or do we wait? Okay, fine.
Yeah, no, I know. Sorry, I was just saying, yes, I understand the question now. So just to explain. So in the application form, there is a section where you can detail your expected profiled spend from August to December. So what you need to put in there is when you expect to incur the expenditure. So if you are, if your project involves some purchase of capital equipment, for example, and you expect to do that in December, then you would put that figure into that profile. Obviously, we expect the revenue will be more sort of consistent throughout the period, but the capital is likely to be peaks and troughs. And then we will pay you as per that profile. And then at the end of the project, we will, you will then sort of formally provide a use of funds statement from your auditors. And then if there needs to be any reconciliation, then we would do it at that point after the project's complete.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Good. So the last hand up is Andy's.
Hello again. While timing is disjointed, can we be assured that the intention is to have a funded LSIP in each LEP area?
So I think the answer to that is the geography that we've put into this prospectus is the intended geography for the LSIPs.
Okay.
And we expect a fund to be available to enable the LSIPs to be, or part of them, whatever, the priorities in the LSIP to be realised.
Okay, thank you.
I think that kind of answers the question.
And Steve, to confirm, we've written to LEPs, to MCAs, and to ERBs to make them aware of our intention yet to roll out LSIPs over those geographies.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, we've got 1 minute.
Yeah, it's just a follow-up of Andy's really. So I was involved in both Sussex and Kent's LSIP development, and they're not getting funding at the moment. They're going to have to go and apply through the funding route, which is fine. But if there are elements of the LSIP that we want to pick up that they may pick up in their LSIP bid, is that duplication of funding? It goes back to my original point about how do you make sure that things that you put in yours are not duplicates of people's other projects, I guess, because we want to support our ERB in their LSIP bid, but equally we can't wait for them to be shown about whether or not they're going to be successful with that, if that makes sense.
But then if they're being funded to develop an LSIP, that's very different to being funded to deliver against an LSIP.
Well, ours have got an LSIP. They've got the LSIP. They've been a trailblazer in Kent and Sussex.
But there's if they are then successful at being designated as the ERB to continue on that, any funding that then flows to that ERB in order to build on, develop, perfect, or whatever that plan is a different type of funding to the funding that will come through SDF, which is about delivering against that. So I don't see there being unless you were thinking as providers you would employ some staff to develop the plan, which isn't obviously the idea. They don't seem like the same thing.
I'll give you an example then. In Kent, one of the examples in the LSIP is to set up employer panels specifically focused on sectors. So what we would want to do in our SDF, because it's employer engagement, is accelerate the development of a particular sector employer group to enable us to both develop the SDF proposal, but then also pilot and test the products that we'd be developing as part of the SDF. However, if we put that in our bid, does that mean that Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce couldn't put that in their bid for the LSIP implementation? You see what I mean? Because we'll have put in our bid in May. The LSIP opportunity isn't due until the end, due until sometime in May, so we won't be able to make sure that we cross-reference those bids, if you see what I mean. It might be a bit too complicated for this session, and forgive me, but what I'm trying to avoid is for us to be kind of either party, when we're supposed to be working together, is discounted in their bidding process because they're deemed applying for the same money to do similar things.
Yeah, I can understand it. I understand the point around all sorts of things. There's lots of things going on, and they don't all flow sequentially in the way that you would want in a proper and ideal world. I think on that one, I think if you're really thinking in terms of your bid being about delivering that LSIP, and it's kind of a bit too detailed to be able to give a very accurate answer. From our side, what we want is for each area to have a bid and an SDF delivery that does the right stuff that's needed. We're not trying to trip you up. We're not trying to say, if at the point we are looking at bids and we see something where we think it may be duplication, then we're not going to throw your bid out and just say, sorry, unsuccessful. That's not the world we're in, and because it's not competitive between different areas, it's not that would reduce your ranking in a competitive process, if you see what I mean. So I'm trying to reassure you that we're trying to make this work. We're not trying to put you all up against each other in a way that means if you've slightly missed quite how it's meant to be because something else came in later, that's gonna rule you out.
Understood. But as you can imagine, having had 10 to 15 years of competitive tendering processes, each one against one another, we're a little bit reticent about making an error and then being discounted.
Yeah, I can understand.
Don't misconstrue that though.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, and I understand that. It's kind of why I keep reiterating that this isn't competitive between.
And we absolutely, and as a sector, let me tell you, I'm sure I'm not the only one. We welcome this approach from the DFE and would encourage this wholeheartedly throughout government. So thank you for that.
Good. We've run out of time by 4 minutes, so hopefully everyone's got as much as they need for the next couple of days. But please do, if you have further questions, just submit them through Jagger. We're here waiting and ready to answer them, and very much looking forward to funding across the whole country. So I'll wrap up and hopefully see you all again soon. Oh, thanks, Emma. Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Cheers.